G'day, I'm Paul. Ford has just released pricing and payload specs for the new Ranger Super Duty. So I'm going to run you through all of that in just a second. We're filming our next drag racing series, which is why this is a bit of a weird setup and it's going to vent it all behind me. Okay, so Ford Ranger Super Duty, we gave you a walk around of this car, a pre-production car. It had so much interest. I haven't seen anything like this before, and just based on the pricing and the specs that have just come out, there's probably quite a few people at Toyota sweating profusely because it kind of makes the 70 series completely redundant now for a lot of companies that are buying them and converting them for GVM upgrades. So let's start off with pricing. So Ranger Super Duty will launch initially as a cab chassis. That is in single cab, super cab, and double cab. So basically 3 different options there. You then have to pay extra for your actual tray as well. So pricing kicks off at what I thought was a pretty surprising number, $82,990 before on-road costs for the single cab chassis, $86,490 for the super cab chassis, and $89,990 for the double cab chassis. I thought it was going to be a lot more expensive because basically the way that it works at the moment, a lot of these mining companies, forestry companies, and companies that need to use dual cab utes like a 70 series but need extra payload through GVM upgrades have to spend 15, 20 grand on doing these upgrades. The upgrades immediately void the warranty as well, and typically what these companies will do is have a mechanic on site that will basically do the upgrades, and when they go to sell the vehicles down the track, they will revert them back to standard, and that whole process is expensive, both from a labour point of view of hiring a mechanic to be there all the time, and also voiding your warranty as well. This will come from the factory with all of the specs that you need so that it can get right into service and you don't need to modify it and go beyond the standard new car warranty, and Ford is offering this with the same 5-year warranty that they offer for standard Ranger. So that's all sort of good news there. Let's talk about pricing of the trays as well. Ford is offering a range of licensed trays that can be fitted to these vehicles. They seem a bit expensive to me. I don't know the price of these aftermarket accessories and what you would typically pay at the moment on a cab chassis vehicle, but it appears to start around the $7,000 mark and go all the way up to around $8,000 for a matte black steel tray on the double cab chassis. So that is what you're going to have to pay on top of your cab chassis price, unless you want to fit your own tray, but these are the sort of licensed official trays. Ford has already said that they're partnering with a number of other tray builders to offer trays that you can fit to these vehicles that will be covered by the warranty. So that is worth keeping in mind as well. On the paint colours, so we kind of touched on this at the launch, but the range is going to have 5 colours to pick from. One that looks exactly like Sandy Taupe that they're calling a seismic tan. You've got a white colour, a black colour, a command grey, and aluminium metallic. They're going to have traction green, which is the colour of the car that we saw at the preview, available later in 2026, which is when they're going to launch the double cab pickup and XLT variants with style side trays. And that is the one that I'll be going for and that I've put my money down on, so I don't know pricing on that just yet. Now, let's talk about payloads. This is probably something else that has kind of blown me away in terms of the capacities they're talking about here. So we already know GVM of 4,500 kilos. Towing capacity, maximum 4,500 kilos with a brake trailer. GCM, 8,000 kilograms, which is pretty impressive. The payload though, up to just under 2 tons. Now that number has completely surprised me. I didn't think they'd be able to go that high, but the fact that you're able to get just under 2 tons, depending on spec, I think is quite an impressive number there for people that are buying these for work purposes. So keep in mind that is as a cab chassis. If you do fit a tray to it, you are deducting from that payload, but basically 1982 kilos for the single cab chassis, 1896 for the super cab chassis, 1825 for the double cab chassis. And I think that once we get down the path of getting the more consumer-oriented vehicles with the style side trays, that will probably reduce a little bit more because they will be quite heavy in comparison, but it still mean that you're getting probably around the 1,500 kilo mark of payload capacity for the consumer spec vehicle, which I think is decent. We've also got the GAWR, which is basically the axle ratings, 1,900 kilos for the front axle, 2,800 kilos for the rear axle. So that's going to mean that you can get 450 kilos worth of payload on the rear if you're towing a 4.5 ton trailer, then still have adequate capacity for passengers and other accessories on the vehicle, both at the front and the back. So those capacities will really cater for people who don't find the current GVM quite big enough on a Ranger if they are towing at the capacity. This will really give them headroom there to be able to operate this vehicle beyond the current limits of a Ranger. One of the other things that Ford has released now as well is the power and torque figures for the V6 turbo diesel engine. The V6 turbo diesel is the only engine that'll be available with this vehicle, mated to the existing 10-speed automatic transmission. Now, that is an interesting setup because Ford has had to make this EU6 heavy-duty vehicle emissions capable. So that means the addition of AdBlue, and it also means they've had to look at how that is going to affect torque and power outputs. So Ford has now published that they will be able to achieve 154 kilowatts of power at 3250 RPM, and importantly, 600 newton meters of torque at 1750 RPM. So what you'll notice is that power is down on the existing range of V6, but importantly, torque is the same. What they've done to offset some of that is increased cooling capacity. So they've put a bigger fan on that, but they've also made that system more efficient. It's 25% more efficient than the current Ranger. So that'll help this achieve the cooling targets it needs even at its full GVM or GCM. So look, I think these figures that we're seeing here are really impressive. If you are driving this vehicle off-road, they've also quoted some running ground clearances, so up to 300 millimeters, 299 mil for the single cab chassis, 297 for the super cab chassis, and 295 for the double cab chassis, and 850 mil of wading depth. Now, that number's important because they actually measure wading depth at full payload. So that is with the vehicle at its capacity, sagging the most, it is still able to achieve 850 mil of wading depth straight out of the box. So yeah, look, these numbers just in general are quite impressive. I think Ford has done a stellar job here in terms of pricing this and also fitting it with the right specs that it needs. How will it go though? We've spoken about reliability previously, and if you do look through Ranger support groups, as I call them, on Facebook and stuff, you will see people that have had issues with the V6, and Ford claims to have resolved a lot of those. And I've said this before, they really need to make sure that this thing is 100% reliable, because this isn't just going to be used by people running around and doing the occasional bit of towing. This is going to be used by people that are pushing these vehicles to their absolute limits. And if that V6 diesel isn't capable of being reliable enough to cater for this type of load for long and extended durations, they're going to have a big problem there. So one of the reasons people always flock to a 70 series is because you cannot kill them. Toyota only fits accessories and engines to that car after they've been used in other vehicles for like decades, and I'm just joking there, but Toyota really only puts these things into practice on vehicles like 70 series when they have stood the test of time in other vehicles. Ford, on the other hand, yes, this V6 diesel is quite an old engine, the Lion series, but they have made incremental improvements. But are those improvements enough on a vehicle like this to ensure that it is going to be reliable for the type of work that this vehicle is going to be doing? So let's see how that goes. If you haven't seen our video yet of the walk around that we did previously, there is a link in the description below. Let me know your thoughts on pricing and also specs there for off-road capability. I forgot to mention there as well, 1710 mil track width, in addition to those off-road specs as well. But that is pretty much everything they have given us so far. I'll be curious to see what pricing is like for the consumer grade vehicle, but looking at this, it's going to be in the $90,000 market, might even crack through 100K. Potentially. I reckon they might try and get away with that. We'll see what happens, but still think it's good value for money when you consider the amount of oomph you're getting out of this and you know, the amount of work that you would have to do on a standard vehicle to achieve these kinds of payload figures. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. But until next time, take it easy.